I'll never forget the moment it all came crashing down. The groan of splitting wood, the shrieks of panic, and then that deafening splash. The Homeowners Association board, who'd been lording over me for months, stood smugly on my land, posing for photos on their shiny new bridge. In a heartbeat, their grins turned to terror as the whole thing buckled beneath them. From my porch, coffee in hand, I watched their pride and joy plunge into the creek, dragging their egos with it. It was almost poetic, the way their so-called community masterpiece became a pile of splinters in less time than it takes to microwave popcorn. I wasn't laughing, though. I was furious about the wreckage on my property and the damage to the creek I loved. I'm not the vengeful type. I didn't want anyone hurt. All I ever wanted was to be left alone on the land I'd bought and cared for over a decade. Apparently, that was too much to ask. My name's Tom Carver, and I've lived in Maple Grove for nearly 15 years. I bought this 3-acre slice of paradise because it backed up to Silver Creek with ancient oaks that felt like old friends. It was my escape, my quiet corner of the world, and I guarded it fiercely. I'm not big on neighborhood gossip or block parties. I pay my dues, keep my lawn tidy, and expect the same respect in return. That deal held up fine until 4 months ago when I spotted something odd while walking my property line. Bright orange survey flags dotted the creek side of my lot, carving an 8-foot path across my back corner where the water curved. No one had asked me about it. No one had even knocked on my door. In a place like Maple Grove, where big lots mean privacy, strangers don't just wander onto your land and plant flags. The next day, I called the Homeowners Association and got through to Linda Harper, the board president. She's run the show for 3 years, mostly because no one else wants the gig. Linda's the type who treats the HOA handbook like a holy relic, citing rules verbatim and mailing fines for grass a smidge too long. When I asked about the flags, she paused, then chirped in her fake sweet voice. "Oh, those are for our new community project. We're building a pedestrian bridge over the creek to link the walking trails. It's going to be a game changer for the neighborhood." I told her I hadn't heard a peep about any bridge, let alone one crossing my land. She brushed me off. "We announced it in the newsletter. The board voted last month. It'll boost property values, Tom, especially yours, with it right in your backyard." "You're welcome." I wasn't feeling grateful. I told her flat out they couldn't build on my property without my okay. My deed was crystal clear. I own that land, creek bank included. Linda's tone turned icy. "Actually, Mr. Carver, Section 12, Paragraph 7 of the Covenants gives the HOA easement rights for community improvements along waterways. This is well within our authority." I wasn't buying it, but she shut me down, saying I could bring it up at the next board meeting if I had concerns. She hung up before I could argue. That night, I pored over my closing documents. The section she mentioned was vague, talking about reasonable access for maintenance, but nothing about permanent structures. I decided to show up at the meeting, hoping to talk some sense into them. Big mistake. The meeting was in the community clubhouse, packed with about 20 people, mostly Linda's cronies. She ran it like a drill sergeant, zipping through the agenda until it was my turn. I stood up, explained how the bridge cut through my land without my consent, and barely got a sentence out before Frank Nolan, the board's treasurer and Linda's lapdog, cut me off. "The plans are set, contractors paid, and this bridge will benefit everyone, including you, Mr. Carver. You're holding up progress." Heads nodded. A neighbor I vaguely knew piped up. "Some folks just don't get community spirit." The room went cold, and I realized I was the bad guy's selfish jerk who wouldn't share his land for the greater good. When I tried to argue they'd skipped proper notifications, Linda shut me down. All procedures were followed. "Our legal counsel says we're in the clear." The vote's done. Discussion closed. I was out the door, whispers trailing me. "Always keeps to himself," someone muttered. "Probably hiding something back there," another said. Linda had already turned the neighborhood against me. I hired a lawyer, Sarah Bennett, who confirmed the HOA was way out of line. Their easement rights covered utilities and maintenance, not building bridges. She sent a letter demanding they stop, but instead of backing off, they doubled down. 3 days later, I came home to find an excavator, a cement mixer, and a truckload of lumber parked on my land. No heads up, nothing. The contractor, a gruff guy named Mike, showed me permits signed by Linda. "Just doing my job, man," he said. I called Sarah, who told me to document everything while she filed for an injunction. By morning, the damage was done. They'd bulldozed 3 of my century-old oaks, cracked my garden shed's foundation, and torn up the creek bank for footings. I was Lee VYD, snapping photos and VYDOs of every inch of destruction. Linda was there, overseeing it all with a smug grin. "Lovely day for progress, isn't it?" she said, like she wasn't wrecking my home. I held up Sarah's letter. "You know you don't have the right to build here." Her smile didn't budge. "Our legal team disagrees. If you mess with the crew, we'll have to act against you for obstructing HOA business." They were racing to finish before the courts could stop them, banking on it being harder to tear down a done deal. I tried appealing to other board members, like Ellen Reed, who seemed reasonable once. I caught her by the mailboxes and pleaded, "Ellen, those trees are over 100 years old. Isn't that worth SAVYing?" She squirmed, but said, "The bridge connects our trails, Tom. It could raise property values by 15%. The board voted 7-0. Linda's set on fish, already naming it Harper Crossing. It hit me. Linda ruled through fear and clout. No one dared cross her. Then I learned Mike, the contractor, was Linda's brother-in-law. His company got the job without bids, explaining the rushed, shoddy work. Sarah added nepotism to our lawsuit. Construction roared on, each day bringing more noise and ruin. I documented it all, every felled tree, every displaced duck, every missing heron. The creek's wildlife vanished. One worker, a kid named Jake, approached me during a break. "Some of us don't feel right about this," he whispered. "My grandpa was a builder, taught me to respect the land. But I need this job." I asked him to tip me off about anything unsafe. He nodded, and sometimes he'd subtly point out sloppy work from my camera. The bridge wasn't some simple walkway. It was a gaudy covered structure with benches, railings, and solar lights, 2/3 of it on my land. The design was overkill, more about making a statement than serving a purpose. Digging for lights tore up the creek bank further. I overheard workers arguing with Mike about blueprints, one guy getting fired for refusing to install supports that weren't up to code. Meanwhile, the neighborhood turned on me. Anonymous notes called me selfish. Someone spray-painted "community hater" on my driveway. My neighbor Clara, a retired teacher I'd swapped veggies with for years, went cold. When I confronted her, she admitted the HOA claimed my obstruction was costing everyone due $300 in fees. They'd even spread lies that I was unstable, snapping photos of kids and harassing workers. I was floored. They were smearing me as a danger. One night, staring at the bridge's ugly skeleton under floodlights, I wondered if fighting was worth it. My reputation was trashed, and the HOA had the community's backing. But Sarah handed me a game changer. Emails from Linda's team, obtained through discovery. They showed her plotting to steamroll me from the start, fudging permits and rallying neighbors against me. My resolve hardened. Then, digging through county records, I found gold. My lot's final plat map showed no HOA easement. The land was fully mine. Sarah filed new motions, and I hand-delivered cease and desist letters. The HOA's response? They worked faster, crews hammering underlights into the night. I called the county inspector, Harold Tate, who found a slew of violations wrong permits, no soil tests, no waterway assessments. He slapped a stop work order on the site, but Linda called an emergency meeting, painting me as a VY lane costing thousands. She announced a community walkthrough to defy the order, inviting everyone to see their bridge. It was reckless, illegal, and dangerous. I hired an engineer, Carl Hayes, who called the bridge a disaster waiting to happen. Cheap pine beams, weak bolts, watery concrete, and a botch truss system. It was a death trap. He pinpointed the center as the weak spot, especially with the clay-heavy soil swelling from recent rain. I sent his report to the county and Linda, who dismissed it as biased and pushed ahead with the event. I posted warning signs, dangerous structure, and but they were gone by Friday, replaced with a grand opening banner. I tried one last time to reason with Linda, handing her the report at her door. For a second, she wavered, but Frank snatched it, tossed it in the trash, and slammed the door. I set up cameras, charged my phone, and braced for Saturday. At dawn, I saw the creek rising, lapping at the footings. The soil looked eroded. Someone had slipped a threatening note under my door. A stick figure falling off a bridge with accidents happen. I bagged it for EVY Denke. By 9 a.m., Linda's crew was decorating, ignoring me. Sarah arrived, making them nervous. At 10, 50 neighbors showed up, kids running, music blaring. Linda gave a pompous speech, cut a ribbon, and led the board onto the bridge for photos. 20 people followed, spreading out. Then came a low groan, then a crack. I yelled, "Get off!" But another crack thundered and the center collapsed. People slid, railings snapped, and the bridge crashed into the creek. Screams echoed as debris rained down. The water was shallow, but the 12-foot drop and jagged wreckage caused cuts, bruises, and Frank's broken ankle. I helped pull people out, even Linda, who stared at me, blood trickling from her forehead. Paramedics swarmed, and newsmen rolled up, eating up the drama. Jake, the worker, told me he'd quit after Mike ignored his warnings about the Bridges Center. He overheard Linda push for the event to beat my court date, despite knowing it wasn't safe. He agreed to testify. Then I spotted chemical barrels leaking into the creek, an environmental mess. A county official, the VYD Lee, promised a full investigation. Standing amid the chaos, I felt no Torianly grief for the creek and the avoidable injuries. I approached Linda, bandaged and dazed, and handed her lawsuit papers for trespassing, damage, and endangerment. Her hand shook as she realized the board could face personal liability. "You knew," she whispered. "I tried to warn you," I said. Walking away, I felt the weight lift. The bridge was gone, and so was the HOA's untouchable aura. Sometimes, it takes a collapse to expose a rotten foundation. What would you have done if my shoes fought like hell, or let it go? Was I right to stand my ground, or did I push too far? Should Linda and the board face jail time, or is losing their reputations enough? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button if this story got you fired up, and subscribe for more real-life dramas that'll make you question everything.